All right, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of The Teardown. My name is Jeff Gluck. I'm along with Jordan Bianchi. We are motorsports writers for The Athletic, and today we're here to talk about the Las Vegas Motor Speedway race. I'm here in Las Vegas. Still got some daylight here. Nice blue sky. Turned out to be a great, pleasant day, and a even better day if you are from the Wood Brothers racing team or a fan of the 21 car, because Jordan, here we have the first intermediate track race of the year. We're going to see, is it Larson? Is it Byron? Is it going to be, one of these powerhouse winners that, it just doesn't, it's just one of the big names is going to step up.
Yeah. This is the place.
Winning over and over. Right.
Yep.
And here we have Josh Berry, first career NASCAR Cup Series win. Go figure, Jordan. Go figure.
It's so funny. We've talked about it so much these last few weeks. We've had two drafting tracks. We had a road course. Like maybe we might get an upset winner at one of those and kind of shake up the playoff field. No. Byron and Bell, two probable championship contenders, right? And then it's like you said, go to Las Vegas. This is where really everybody shows up and shows out. Hendrick comes here and does typically well. We know Christopher Bell almost won here last fall. Is Penske got speed like they did last year? And honestly, like Penske came to play, Hendrick came to play, Bell looked good at times. We can talk more about the other JGR drivers, but it looked like it was going to kind of be the showdown we anticipated it being. And instead, we get a complete upset winner in Josh Berry. Deserved. I don't want to detract from that at all. This was a very much deserved win. And it needs to be said, they finished top 5 a week ago at Phoenix as well. It's crazy. This is not where I thought brackets would be busted for projecting our playoff field, but we've got it.
Yeah, I mean, shame on us for not seeing this, right? I mean, because, we've talked about recently, right? This is essentially the 4th Penske car. This car is prepared on the Penske shop floor. And we know that it's alongside all the same stuff as the 22 car, the 12 car, the 2 car. Miles Stanley, the new crew chief for the Wood Brothers, has been a long time Penske engineer and head of the vehicle performance stuff there. But he's been part of championships. There's deep Penske ties and connections. And so maybe we should have seen this coming. However, when you look at it, you go, well, that's not new. That's been the case there. That Wood Brothers have had this alliance and this connection, and they haven't gone out to a 1.5 mile track and been winning races. They hadn't even made the playoffs recently until the Daytona win with Harrison Burton last year. So sure, it's easy to look back now and go, well, it makes sense. But man, I think it's not as easy. It's not as cut and dry. I asked John Wood about this very topic after the race, and he said, when we suck, it's all on us, and we're the single car team. And when we do well, it's Penske, it's a Penske car kind of thing. And I think that is true to some degree. But as he said himself, the results speak for themselves, right? Like they are running well. As you said, they had a top 5 at Phoenix last week. They were running well all day today. This wasn't like a totally out of nowhere fluke like you would see in some fuel mileage type situations. So, I mean, this was they hit the strategy at the right time for sure, as did some others. But man, they are looking like real contenders right now.
They are. And I think we lose sight of the fact we talk about the Penske Wood Brothers Alliance. This was an organization that made the playoffs on points multiple years, and they picked a driver in Harrison Burton who probably, this is not a disrespect, he wasn't ready for this ride. He probably needed a little bit more time in the Xfinity series, and it showed the disconnect there. But this team has a history of if you give them a capable driver, they can win. They finished second in Las Vegas in 2019, I think it was, to Kurt Busch. Matty D did. I mean, so they have a history of really being able to overachieve, but they have to hit the driver component right, and they've got to get some lucky breaks along the way. And we said this last year when Josh Berry's hired. This was a really good fit for this team. And it feels like he had a driver. I personally felt like they were a year away. I felt like he needed some more seasoning in the Cup Series. He only has, I think, this 57th career start. I thought he needs some more time, another year in the Xfinity Series. I thought Miles, first year crew chief, getting his feet wet, was going to have to get it. And I thought this was a build for 2026 thing, have some good runs and kind of turn that corner. I didn't expect to see it this year, but it's really been impressive. And they've had speed a lot of different places. Obviously on the super speedways, we know how good they are there. But the Phoenix thing, and we probably undersold this last week, is like how impressive it was for them to go there and run like that. And then today, sure, the cautions fell their way, but you know what? You still got to take advantage of it. They still had a fast car. Josh executed great on that last restart, made the moves when he had to. It could be really easy to say this is a fluke win. This is nothing fluke about this. This is a deserved win by a very good driver who has showed his stripes and multiple times in the Xfinity Series, and a team who, when they have things going right, have shown they can win races at this level. It's been a rough few years, but it certainly seems like now the future is very bright for this organization.
Yeah, and you think, based on these last couple of weeks here, you go, okay, they've really got something here. They're in the playoffs now, and it sets up well for them if they can continue to build the season. Because as you said, second year driver, first year crew chief, you would think that it would take them a while to gel and get together and work on things. But fast cars do a lot. Sometimes you get the strategy right. And it's pretty special when you're, okay, you have Austin Cindric. He had a great looking race for a while until he got back in traffic, but he led 47 laps. Logano was up there for a while, and you're like, oh, here comes Logano, right? He led 40 laps today. Blaney obviously, had a miserable start to the weekend by crashing in practice. And then he was able to, get up to the, top 15 or whatever it was. And then he had to go all the way to the back, and then he still overcame
Lost
that.
Lost two laps,
overcame that, was back. And then it all goes south again when they were like 4 wide. And, I don't know whose fault that was. He kind of took the blame for it on
the racing
TV.
deal.
Yeah, that one's a tough one. But either way, he wrecks out. But I mean, they had speed, it felt like, right? I mean, clearly, if he's able to zoom up there like he had one of the fastest cars. So all of Penske was looking pretty solid. And again, Josh is part of that. Now, again, I just feel a little bit of guilt because I feel like I've been saying too much. Like, I'm even putting in my tweets, right? Like when I do, I recap the stage, and I'm saying, okay, here's the breakdown of the top 10 by team. And I'm putting Penske / Wood Brothers together because, again, you walk into the Penske shop, the 21 car is on the floor. But we weren't raising that so often last year. Like, why is this 21 car? That's a Penske car. Why are they so far off? Why aren't they doing well, or whatever? So, it's a little bit of a crutch to now be like, well, yeah, of course. Yeah. See, it's Penske car. So that's my, I just feel a little bit of guilt about that because they do, it is their people. They picked Josh Berry. And they deserve to celebrate it, not just saying, well, it's a Penske car. They deserve more credit than that.
They absolutely deserve more credit. And, John Wood, who's kind of taken over the leadership role within the organization, has done a really good job of pointing this team forward. He played a huge role in selecting Josh Berry. He has played a huge role in kind of shaping this team and bringing it forward out of the last dark ages that this team has had this last few years. The Daytona win aside, it has been a struggle. This team is much different and much more, I feel like, forward thinking than it has been for some time, and it's starting to pay dividends now on the racetrack.
Let's talk about Josh Berry himself and what a story this guy is. He was working as a bank teller in Tennessee, suburb of Nashville, Hendersonville. Taylor Swift went to the same school. He did at the same time, not the same grade, but he knew of her. He saw her in the talent show at school. Yeah. He was working in the bank as a bank teller, and he quit because he had met this dude racing online named Dale Earnhardt Jr. And he had, they'd connected, and he gets a chance to go drive late models for Dale Jr. And when he gets this chance, he walks in and he quits at the bank. And he said a few years ago, that he remembers that the people that worked at the bank were pretty mad that he quit. They're like, oh, great. He's moving to North Carolina to do this. Like, got to fill this position at the bank.
Good luck. Thanks.
Yeah. So moves down there and obviously has a lot of success with late models and continuing on the short track stuff. But listen, I mean, we've seen, it's not easy to go. In fact, nobody's really done it to the degree that he did it, to go from the late model ranks to the Cup ranks. I mean, he said he wanted to be like Bubba Pollard. He wasn't trying to be, a Cup Series star. And obviously, a lot of people, know the story of how he gets a chance just to race an Xfinity car, right? Like, that's so cool. He's going to make an Xfinity start, gets another chance, gets a full-time ride in Xfinity. Don't forget too, here we are at Vegas. And was it 2 years ago? This weekend, he gets a call because he was obviously running full-time Xfinity. Chase Elliott had broken his leg. That was here this weekend 2 years ago, and they put Josh Berry in the car, and he finishes 29th, I believe. And he just talked about in the press conference that we just finished up. He flies back on the plane that night thinking, I blew it. That was my one chance. My chance at a Cup career is over, because he had made just a couple Cup starts prior to that. Hendrick puts him as the sub for Chase Elliott, and he runs 29th in the 9 car. And it's like, man, he thinks he's done. Well, they kept giving him chances. And he got better. Maybe he had that great run at Richmond.
Finished second.
Yep. And he's able to parlay that into a ride at SHR. And as soon as he gets there, SHR falls apart.
Yeah.
And it's like, what's going to happen with this guy, And everybody thought, well, he'll, stay together with Rodney Childers and all this stuff. And he ends up with the Wood brothers. Great opportunity. But he went through a lot last year. They didn't run, particularly amazing or anything. He had some good runs at times. But you go, okay, well, man, I mean, he's obviously great at short tracks. What else does he have? What else can he show in the Cup Series? This could be a steep learning curve for this guy. And it just turns out that, like, there's a lot there, right? Like, you put I think he said the right people around you and fast cars. He's proven it on bigger tracks. Dale Jr.'s here in the live chat on YouTube, and we just posted a comment from him. He says 10 years of late models, multiple track championships, a national championship, Cars Tour champion, over 100 feature wins. But despite that, as we all know, if you don't have the money and the opportunity, you're not going to make it. He's, he got those opportunities and he made the most of them. So here he is at the Cup level now, and now he is a Cup Series race winner. Quite a story that we just don't really see anymore. In some ways,
he is very much a throwback in the sense of a guy who pounded his way on the dirt on the short tracks for a long time, waiting for a break that maybe never would come. Finally got it, and then it was kind of there, and then it wasn't there. This is a 34-year-old rookie in the Cup Series, which a couple decades ago wasn't completely unheard of. That was kind of the norm, as you progress to the Cup Series in your 30s. Now it's almost ancient. Now you get 18, 19, 20-year-old kids coming in, and this is a 34-year-old, or last year 33-year-old rookie in the Cup Series. Now he's in it is remarkable, his story of perseverance and continue opportunities you think were going to be there. Remember, he won the Martinsville Xfinity Series race, and he's a part-time driver then. And it was like, oh my goodness, this is amazing. And it was like, but it wasn't even a full-time ride, because Sammy Smith was coming in. Sam Mayer was coming in, and that ride was earmarked for him. And so he didn't even have a full-time ride, even though he had won races in the Xfinity Series. So this continued opportunity. Then you go to Stewart-Haas Racing. Kevin Harvick retires. He's going to be the successor there, kind of the hand-picked guy. He's in team with Rodney Childers, like, oh man, 2 short trackers. This is a great opportunity. Well, that implodes for reasons beyond his control. And he goes to the Wood Brothers, and another good opportunity, but it's a startup project in a lot of ways, right? I mean, it's not this is a rebuilding project. And he goes there and he's made it work, and he's having success. And it's going to be remarkable to see him be with a team for multiple years, and work with the same crew chief for multiple years and actually build something that's his. And it isn't necessarily going to be taken away for reasons beyond his control. We're assuming the Wood Brothers aren't going anywhere or anything like that. This NASCAR was for so long was filled with drivers like Josh Berry. And for a lot of different reasons, that identity has been lost, for good and bad reasons. And it's good to see that still happen. That the grassroots route to Major League stock car racing is still there. It's not easy, and there's a lot of hurdles and everything. But you get some breaks along the way, and you've got talent, you're willing to work hard, you still can do it.
Well, it'll be interesting to see where this Wood Brothers team goes from here, because certainly it's not like they were slow, but they weren't the fastest car today. Fastest car today was Kyle Larson, in my opinion. The way that they looked, I mean, we talked about Penske, but Hendrick for a while in this race looked like they were controlling it. You had Kyle Larson and William Byron running 1-2, and it just looked like, okay, here we've seen 3 Gibbs wins in a row, all with Christopher Bell. Here comes Hendrick Motorsports to strike back, right? And I had already had it in my mind, like, okay, we're going to get to the end of this race, and if you count the clash, it would have been 6 Cup Series events so far this year, 3 Gibbs, 3 Hendrick. Here it's setting up to be the season of Hendrick versus Gibbs. Now, this doesn't take anything away from Hendrick's cars because they had the speed. So you can, if you're Hendrick, you can look back and go, well, I mean, we brought fast cars here, but the strategy did not play out at all like it did last year. It looked like it was going to for a minute there, because there was a caution with 60. There was a caution that was going to set up a green flag with 67 laps to go, right? That was the restart. Last year, in the infamous fall race where Christopher Bell was going to win, but Joey Logano played the fuel strategy, that run was going to be 69 laps to go. And of course, the whole field had this in their head, right? Including Cliff Daniels, who I talked to afterwards. He said, kicked himself all winter long for the way that they played that strategy. Obviously, Christopher Bell, all these people had this in their head, right? Like, man, is somebody going to run this out on fuel? What could we do differently? So you had a really interesting scenario, Jordan. You had some cars that were just determined that they were just going to, a lot of cars felt like they couldn't make it from there, even though they made it 69 laps last year. I don't know what the difference would be if it was higher speeds, it was a new left side tire, or I don't know what it would be, but a lot of the numbers were showing we can't make it. Barry was one of those. Logano was, Reddick, Suarez, Hamlin, Preece. That was a group where they said, you know what, we're not gonna go for this right here. We're gonna stay out. So they were banking on, they were either going to run their fuel tank dry and then pit, most of them, not Reddick and Hamlin, or they were going to have to catch a caution. So Reddick and Hamlin were trying to split that stage in half. They pit, they get caught out because here does come the caution. A lot of these Las Vegas races don't have that late caution. It runs clean to the end. This one didn't with Gragson. So that takes Reddick and Hamlin out of it. And you know who it puts in the catbird seat? Not Josh Berry, but Joey Logano, because he was winning at the time. But he comes down pit road, and did they show it on TV ever? What happened?
A little bit. The contact with Ty Dillon.
Is that what I thought? He went long in his pit stall, or went too close to the wall, had to back up.
There seemed like there was a couple things. One, they had a slow pit stop. Not sure why they didn't show that, or if they did, I missed it. And I know that he and the 10 car had contact.
Okay, I was under the impression
they showed that
Logano blew it on the pit stop. Like, he's made a mistake. He like slid through and got too close to the wall and had to back up. If I am understanding correctly, so he goes from first to 20th. Had that not happened, this could easily be a Logano win, jabbing everyone in the same way, sort of a similar type strategy, right? So he takes himself out of it. Reddick had gotten taken out of it because PRN reported that not only did they get caught a lap down, but when Reddick came in for services, Heather DeBow from PRN, the crew was not able to get the left rear tire off. They gave up after a couple tries, so he was on a really old left rear tire. So that takes him out of it. So, of course, when the caution then comes out, everybody has to pit at the same time. Now it's straight up, except those cars that were fastest earlier, they don't have the track position anymore. So like Larson didn't have track position. Byron didn't have track position. It was Suarez. Chastain had scuff tires because so many teams had used their last set of tires already. Priest was up there. Barry was up there. So it was going to come down to those cars, if I'm understanding the strategy correctly. And then Byron and Larson, we're going to have to try to come up through the field. I talked to Byron afterwards, and he felt like, he got to fourth on the restart pretty quickly, but they just got too sort of stretched out. He got to racing Chastain too hard, and that was the end of that. Then Larson got tight in traffic, and Cliff Daniels said afterwards that part of the reason is like everybody, these cars are just closer and closer and closer and closer. And even though they had maybe the fastest car, when he gets in traffic, everybody's so equal now. And he, everybody's pumping up their tires at the end. You can't overcome it very easily. So the fastest cars, if you lose your track position, even though you've got new tires, he had sticker tires, he couldn't come through the field. That's it. Game over. Larson finishes 9th. So obviously Barry's able to race with the guys, Suarez and Priest, who are on the same strategy. Those guys finish 1, 2, 3. Barry makes the winning pass with 18 laps to go, something like that. And runs a flawless end and wins by 1.3 seconds. So that is my impression of strategy. I could be wrong, but that's what I think happened. I had to go through the garage asking crew chiefs, can you explain to me what just happened? Because I wasn't exactly sure how that all shook out. But does that make any sense?
It did make sense, and it was why the running order was so jumbled at the end there. There were so many varying strategies, and the timely cautions today. Cautions felt really inopportune times for a lot of guys today. You had the one sequence early, you had the tire come off during the middle of a green flag cycle. It was very interesting, and I thought you made a really interesting point about how the cars now are just so leveled off, right? And everybody's it's so tight. And we saw that a lot today, where Kyle Larson looked really fast. You put him back in traffic. I thought that last restart, like you, I looked at this, I made my note, like, okay, Kyle Larson's restarting here, like, watch this charge. I made sure I had his in-car on because I wanted to watch him. And I thought he was going to make a move. And then he got bottled up and he was going 3 wide and couldn't make a move. Byron made a couple really big moves, but it happened so many times today. Happened to Logano, happened to some others where it just, for whatever reason, you get back in traffic. Today, it felt like really on an intermediate track. This felt in a way kind of like what we've seen back in the day on intermediate tracks, where track position and being hard pressed to make passes was really hard to do that. And today it was all about track position. And if you couldn't get clean air, you were cooked. Whereas in the past, it felt like an intermediate track, you could still make moves. It didn't feel like you could do that.
Well, it was interesting because like Byron, I was saying to Byron, like, well, hey, at least even though you didn't get the result you want, at least you probably had to feel pretty good that you had, one of the fastest cars here, right? And he's like, I just need to get more picky about what I'm saying on Saturdays because I need like a little bit more drivability in traffic. And you've got to, you almost have to plan for that in these races, right? That's why you were saying, you were so insistent, Bell's going to win 4 in a row. Bell's going to win 4 in a row. And I'm like,
I said he's got a really good shot.
Just, to win 4 in a row, yeah. No, you wrote on The Athletic that you wanted to rub it in that you were so right. And it's which is fine. I get where you're coming from. But my point was he could have a very fast car, but it's so hard to win these races because
I agree.
things happen. The cautions get jumbled up. And so what Byron was saying was he has to, you almost have to plan to be back in traffic and then be able to get through. It's not enough just to say, look how fast my car is, look how fast we are in practice, all this stuff, because you almost have to plan for these scenarios now. The way these races play out. So
it's always been that way, though, to some degree. I mean, it's to some degree, it's always been that way, and you do have to plan, and you have to be able to overcome, and that's why to win these races, you almost need to be perfect across the board, and you have to minimize mistakes. Barry today had a mistake on pit road; they were still able to overcome that, but Logano did himself no favors today. You know, Ryan Blaney, who arguably may have had the fastest car, at least one of the fastest cars, had multiple issues starting in practice, and then carried over to the pit stop, and then gets into a crash. Like you cannot compound errors, and you may be able to get away with one, but getting away with two, getting away with three, and putting yourself back in traffic, you can't do it. And that's where it is so hard to win these races. And yeah, I mean, I thought Bell was going to come here and dominate, or not dominate, but I thought he was going to come here and have speed and do well, but we never got to see it really, because they had to start in the back because they had a unapproved adjustment. They had some other issues on pit road. They had the pit stop where they had to go into Chase Briscoe's pit stall and tighten things up, and that cost them a ton of spots after I think he had just finished second in the stage. And so it's like you can't keep making errors, and you have to be almost perfect. And it sounds silly. You've got to be lucky, of course, because you got to be hope that cautions fall your way and everything. And then when the opportunity comes and you've got an opportunity to make a bunch of moves and pass a bunch of guys and restart, you got to go. And you almost have to be cutthroat about it.
I mean, I will say, I mean, we talked, you say that, you know, it was harder to pass in some degrees. I mean, you had 9 drivers lead double digit laps today. And in fact, it in the end, it adds up to a track record lead changes here at Las Vegas from what I can tell. I think there's 32 lead changes.
Yep.
The most ever that we've seen in Las Vegas. I think the previous was maybe 28.
And you did see guys make big moves. Larson had a huge run there at one point. He came back up. Blaney passed a bunch of cars. Like, you could pass cars, but it did feel like there was many instances today where guys just they felt like they got stuck, you know, and because of that. So competitive race, but it didn't have that same feel as we've seen for other intermediate tracks over the years.
Well, again, Larson was the fastest, in my opinion. Speaking of Kyle Larson, Kubota High Limit Racing, which is co-owned by Larson, and 6-time national sprint car champion Brad Sweet, has partnered with the Teardown. They continue to change the sport of sprint car racing in its second national touring season. The series will host 60 events across the country this year, including back with NASCAR in sort of a companion capacity at Texas Motor Speedway on May 1st and 3rd, and just 5 minutes from Kansas Speedway at Lakeside on May 9th during NASCAR weekend. So you can go to highlimitracing.com to see when Larson, Brad Sweet, Rico Abreu, and the full cast of the High Rollers will be at a track near you, as well as get your tickets. That was including me this weekend. There's the first of these companion type events for High Limit was over at the Las Vegas Motor Speedway dirt track, which have you been to Las Vegas? No, right?
Yes, I've been to Las Vegas.
Oh, okay. The dirt track is over right in the parking lot, in the same parking lot. So it was really nice to be able to just run over there. Man, we had some brutal wind the first night, and it was still like a pretty hardy crowd.
Yeah.
And finally, everybody ran last night. And Ty Gibbs, by the way.
How impressive is that, by the way, to make the A main in your debut?
A.
That's really cool.
He'd never raced a sprint car before. He had just tested it. He's one of the ones that was running, trying to, this is part of the reason that it was able to open up for Bell to run it. And Ty Gibbs, unfortunately, had a pretty big wreck, pretty big hit, but it was so, he was pumped up to make the A. Like, they had him on the PA, and the crowd was reacting to it. Larson was obviously in contention. Corey Day, now moving over to NASCAR. He ran full time with High Limit last year, and Corey Day moved over went back and after running the truck race and won the whole thing, 25 grand last night. And I tell you what, like Corey Day, Larson, that's like Larson's protege now. Somebody asked me on social media the other day, wait, who's this kid? It turned out they were being sarcastic, and I like went on this, dude, you don't know who this person is? But he's Hendrick Motorsports driver.
Yeah.
He's in their pipeline. They're trying to put him in as much stuff as possible because he is a big time prospect. And, it's cool to be, there was so many NASCAR fans out there. And last night I was talking to Kyle Busch. He was doing a little segment at the high limit race for Flow Racing. And we were chatting before he went on the air. And I was like, do you think what do you think the crowd is consisting of? And he's like, I think this is like 80% campers who were like here for NASCAR and like came over, because you could see a lot of NASCAR shirts in the crowd, and obviously there's like a lot of dirt fans and that come over as well. But it was such a cool, like, for me, the appeal of high limit is like a lot of the complaints that we talk about on the teardown about NASCAR, about like some of the belly aching, like, oh, there's not enough horsepower. Oh, I want full season points, stuff like that. Like, why don't you go over to the dirt track? You know what I mean? Like, they have 900 horsepower cars. They have like rocket ship strapped between their legs and like just trying to manhandle this thing. Right? I mean, it's crazy.
Yes.
Like it is.
I know you made my favorite website.
Well, listen, like it's such, they have this season long points. Like it's just like, I'm trying to tell people, NASCAR fans, like, why don't you go look at this? So I think when you get NASCAR fans to go over there, they're like, okay, this is pretty badass. Like, I could check this out. So, it's the accessibility of going over there, being able to get, these people are like, oh, I want to meet Kyle Larson or, whoever. I want to meet these drivers. And it's like, I'll just go down in the pits, like literally, like go down the pits after the race. Like Larson stands there signing. He's like signing for people as they're getting in there, as he's getting in his car. Like, you can meet all these guys. Like, it's such a throwback for me in terms of like the grassroots part of it. So obviously I know like a lot of people, everybody has their own thing, right? Like some people like sports cars, some people like, late models and stuff like that. Like, for me, I really like the dirt stuff. I need you to get you out to more dirt races, but
I like dirt races.
I'm going to Texas and Kansas. Yeah. And so I'm excited that High Limit's going to be there.
I think they do a really good job of the scheduling of how, like, this is a great job. They did it last year at Texas. You talk about the upcoming races at Kansas and Texas, and having a companion race, like how the NASCAR guys are going to be there. It's a great supplement to the weekend. And you have, a great opportunity for Christopher Bell or Larson or Ty Gibbs to come over and run these races. Really smart setting up the schedule that way.
Well, again, if you're interested, first of all, if you're going to Texas, the Texas Motor Speedway dirt track is like right behind Big Haas, like right back there. I went to the high limit race there last year. So that's going to be May 1st and 3rd, running right with NASCAR if you're going. And then Lakeside Speedway, for those of you who haven't been to Kansas, I mean, it's like literally right down the road. You just go right out of the tunnel. It is not far at all. So that is May 9th during NASCAR weekend as well. So I'm sure Larson will be running. Will Bell run? I'm not sure. He was trying to run this weekend. I bet Ty Gibbs will run. Some of these other NASCAR guys will run. So there's a good crossover there for NASCAR. And again, thanks to High Limit for partnering with our podcast here. And you can go buy your tickets at highlimitracing.com. Did you see, by the way, Jordan, before we go on to other stuff, that High Limit announced a charter type system, but they're calling it franchise.
Yeah, there's no charters, it's franchise.
Yeah. So that was interesting because they're giving they gave 5 teams charters already, and then 5 more teams will get them after this year. They're paying out like $18 million over the course of 4 years. Like, that's the total over 4 years. But those charters, by the way, are permanent charters. Franchises, permanent franchises, not charters. So that's going to be something interesting to follow. I have a feeling that it will somehow appear in the 2311 lawsuit in some sort of filing in some way, don't you think? Like it'll just magic. It'll be like, and by the way, here's this other racing series doing this.
At
You know,
this point, I expect everything to end up in loss, and it's going to end up in some document, or it's going to be brought up in court, or some press conference or something. It's nonstop at this point.
Yeah, I mean, NASCAR in the filing recently, they used one of those like sports COTA or essentially sports or whatever link, and I'm like, oh man, you gotta
I don't know who's running your who's putting your
you gotta get some more high quality links there.
Who's ever putting your documents together, let's have a conversation with them, and let's not be citing those websites, please. You're not doing anybody any service.
Back to today's race. So Trackhouse needed a good day.
Yeah,
and
they did. Suarez especially
got it with Suarez really needed a good day. Do you want to guess how many spots in the points Daniel Suarez gained today?
I had it actually right in front of me. I don't know. I'm gonna say 15.
It was 10.
10.
He gained the second most spots in the points today because Austin Cindric gained 11. But yeah, Suarez, especially after last week at Phoenix, I mean, he was going to run top 10. It looked like he was running 6th at the time when he got into the Catherine Legge incident. But it's like it looked like he was going to have a chance to win this for a little bit. Josh Berry passed him late, but Trackhouse ends up with 2 top 5 finishes. Suarez finishes 2nd. Ross Chastain finishes 5th. Chastain is all the way up to 10th in the point standings now.
Mm-hmm.
So
stringing together some good runs.
Can they build on this a little bit here? Like where do you think Trackhouse is?
I think they're in a good spot. I mean, they Chastain seems to be kind of doing Ross Chastain things, which is just kind of grinding out top 10s, putting himself in the mix. And today he was in the mix. And unlike a year ago when they had a lot of times they would be running well in races late, and then something would go wrong, either out of their control or in their control, and it would derail it. They seem now to kind of putting them together and stringing them together. And that's the big thing. Now, you've got to find that speed, though. I thought, based off of practice, I thought he was going to be qualifying much better than he did. And he got really loose on his qualifying lap, and he ended up qualifying 19, 20, somewhere in there. I thought he was going to be a bigger player today, but really just a real solid day. They used some strategy there, 2-tire stop at one point, 2 different times, actually, to put themselves in position. They just keep grinding out the finishes. Suarez is interesting. You feel bad for what happened a week ago. Not his fault, right? Running top 10, has an accident. Go back a week before that, COTA, running well at COTA. Hits messes up there, gets loose, spins him out, and then his teammate hits him. So back-to-back weeks has solid runs in line, doesn't materialize. Today, he was able to punch his way through and at least get the finish. But this is a driver who needs a win and is really, in a lot of respects, racing for his job. He's on a 1-year contract with Trackhouse Racing. We know about Connor Zellage. We know that they only got 3 charters. They got 3 teams. What are they going to do? Like, Suarez really needs a win, and it's great that he's stringing together these runs now consecutively. And you're running well, but you've got to convert this over to a win, because honestly, it's great you're getting the points and everything, but unless you get a win and get yourself locked in the playoffs, you've got to build your case of why you deserve to stay with this team, or make yourself attractive for potential suitors out there. And I think winning is the best way, but he has to feel good about how leaving here. He's going to feel good about how he performed today, but in the moment, it's certainly going to be, it's a stomach punch of like, man, we were almost there, but we just didn't have it.
Well, Suarez had a lot of things to say before this race. Fascinating stuff about the NASCAR approval process, and want to tease that I'm going to be writing a bigger piece for The Athletic this week, because I was originally just going to do a little short item in my column tomorrow, but so many people have so many varied opinions about the approval process after the Catherine Legge incident. And obviously Casey Mears is being approved to come back and try to get his 10 cup starts that he needs to get 500, but he's not allowed to run above 1.5 mile tracks yet. So he's got to do Martinsville first. We heard the whole Mike Wallace thing, right? Elio Castroneves came in, and even though he was fell under the elite driver program. So he got to test and do, sim time and ran ARCA. He had a tough speed weeks, right? Like it was a lot for him. So you look at all these various examples and it's just like, man, there's, some, Parker Kligerman and Landon Castle's podcast, they're talking about, there should be a license program. And, should there, how do you get people prepared? How do you, should you have to run a certain amount of Xfinity races, or should you have to, like an IndyCar, like for the Indy 500, meet a certain mile per hour speed at certain tracks? There's a lot to it. So got a lot of answers, talked to NASCAR about it. And, it's a very nuanced conversation. So check that out on The Athletic this week. I'm planning to put something big together on that. So
it's a nuanced conversation, and I agree. There needs to be more of a conversation, and I've heard some interesting ideas floated this weekend. One of them was maybe having the drivers more involved in the conversation to have a say of who's approved and who's not approved, and I think that's merit. I think someone else brought up the fact of why not give a first-time driver more practice on the weekend. Like another 15 minutes or 20 minutes or something like that, specifically on the track they're racing on, which I think also has merit. And I think the one thing that we talked about it last week, and it stands true, is drivers do not have a lot of practice time. So if you're a new driver coming into this series, you're learning all of this. And I know you have an acclimation session, and that helps to some degree, but still, you're going for a first time, brand new team. You're working everything out, trying to figure this out on this track. Like, it would be nice to have more than 20 minutes on the racetrack. It would be nice to have a prolonged practice period where you can figure things out and you're able to actually give feedback to your team. And so you come in and talk to your team and say, hey, this is what's going on with the car. And your crew chief actually then has time to make adjustments and actually give you an opportunity to get you more comfortable in a race car. That's huge. Instead of just throwing someone in the deep end and saying, here's 20 minutes, figure it out, and you're not really going to be making major adjustments to your race car. The current format, it's got pros and cons, but it's right now the way it is. It's really stacked against drivers coming over and having success. And I know SVG is the exception to this rule, and I get that, but that was a very special set of circumstances, weather, street course, etc. And he is the exception to the rule. And it would be nice to have more practice in this, but there is, putting light on this, I think there is a conversation to be had about this situation. And it did Catherine a disservice to how she was put in that position last week with a smaller team, without a lot of practice. I don't know what the correct way is, but if you look at it, I feel like she had the credentials to be in the car, but I just didn't feel like she had the opportunity to acclimate herself to a level that was acceptable.
That's the problem, though, right? Because there's so many. I mean, would an hour of practice change anything about what happened for last week for her?
Maybe.
I don't know. I don't know if that's the thing. I don't know if that it couldn't hurt, but NASCAR is obviously they're still in this cost cutting mode as well, where they don't want people to, they don't want to have to buy more tires. And
I'm so tired. Can we have this conversation quick? I'm sorry. Like, I understand that, and I'm sorry. But Brad Keselowski said this a few weeks ago at Atlanta Motor Speedway, and I agree with him. This is one of the premier racing series in the world, arguably the number 2 behind Formula One. This is big boy, high level stock car racing. And I understand wanting to save teams money, and you shouldn't be spending extravagant expensive. We're not talking F1 levels here. But to say we're going to cut costs because we're going to cut practice to do that, that's not acceptable to me. There are different ways to cut cost if you're really concerned about that. But cutting the actual on-track product, I don't agree with. I don't like that there's minimal practice. I don't like the fact that you look at other racing series, pick one, have all of this practice, and you're like looking at this for NASCAR, and you're like, y'all got 20 minutes? That's it? It's less on-track product for the people at the racetrack. There are a lot of reasons to cut costs in NASCAR. Actually, cutting practice isn't one of them. And from a lot of people I've talked to, they're not really saving that much money, if at all.
The thing is, I think from NASCAR's standpoint, they had the option to go, okay, should we do a 50-minute session, or teams, would you like us to split it up into 2 different sessions? Because then you can have your groups, you can have your teammates look at what you did in the other group. You don't have to put a different set of tires on. And it sounds like, from what I understand, the teams told NASCAR, we would rather have it this way. I agree with you what you're saying, but it sounds like this originally stemmed from the teams not having to want to come in and make changes over a 50-minute session and have all that stuff and go back out and make different runs. And so I get what you're saying, but it's also got to be the teams too that want to say, hey, like we are willing to do this, because they have all these conversations with the teams and they have all these councils and all this stuff. So if it was this much of an outcry from the teams, we need more practice. Don't you think that they would just go, okay, fine. What does it matter to NASCAR? It's the same window.
Well,
they don't,
like a couple things. One, teams have been screaming about certain things that NASCAR has said, no, we're not doing. Horsepower, for example. Teams of drivers have been screaming, we want more horsepower, or we want softer tires, They're finally getting softer tires. They're not getting the horsepower. And I agree. Like, you want to build a consensus. And I don't know what that number is, but I know there's 15 teams. And that's the problem, though, is you have 15 teams on varying agendas. You have some teams that say, listen, Brad Keselowski is a perfect example. I want more practice. I think we should have more practice. I'm willing to, we're not really saving any money here. But then there's other teams that are looking at it saying, this doesn't really do anything for us. There are a lot of variables in there. And it's to me, this is where it is just really hard. This is how, when you govern the sport, it's almost like you've just got to make a decision, and you want to get input from everybody. But when you got 15 different cooks in the kitchen, you're going to have 15 different recipes. Everybody's going to have different priorities, and that's the hard thing. And so I think at the end of the day, you got to look at what's best for the on-track product, as a whole. And to me, that's more practice.
Yeah. I mean, it even goes back to the approval process that we were talking about earlier, because let's say they say, like in Catherine Legg's situation, let's say they would have said, okay, we'd like to see you do this, and this, like in other series first, or, we want you to run truck start. We want you to make Xfinity start. Let's do that. Okay. So then the money that she was trying to take to Live Fast Racing, it's like, okay, well, we can't do that. Or, we don't have the budget to go run a truck start and an Xfinity start. This is what we have the budget for. Similarly, do you go to teams that say, okay, well, we don't have the like Elio, right? Like, if you're going to say, okay, this is a matter of, we want him to do X and X. And he's like, I only have time for this one start. I only have time to do Daytona. I don't have time to go run this and then come back next year or whatever. Or SVG, if you had said you need to check these boxes before you can run a road course in Cup, you've got to run Xfinity first. Would it have been like, well, that whole storyline never happened. So there's got to be reasonable people that can find, whether it's practice, whether it's approval process. It's all sort of tied together. It's all goes back to resources, right? Putting people in the cars or spending more on tires. I hope that everybody can get together and decide something, because right now it just doesn't feel like it just feels like it's broken a little bit. And especially when you have a lot of these drivers saying we are the most elite series, and you shouldn't just be able to show up and say, here I am. I'm the Cubs now. And look, that's not necessarily the case, because NASCAR, Suarez was talking about how NASCAR told him that, you should see the people we rejected to run Cup. Like, we rejected 5 people this year alone. I think he was saying that. But Suarez also said, Elio had all this practice and all this time and to do all this stuff with the testing, right? And he said on Daytona 500 race day morning, Elio is still as much of a world-class driver and accomplished driver as he is. Suarez said, Elio is still asking me like really basic stuff as we're getting ready to race in the Daytona 500 on Sunday morning. And it was like, whoa, he's not, I don't know if he's ready for this yet, kind of thing. So
that's the thing, though, is preparing for the Daytona 500. And Castro Neves did run an ARCA race, and I know he ran in the draft in a practice session, but it was a limited practice session. Most of his testing, though, it was done out, single car runs, right? You go to
Talladega,
and
right.
that is not going to get you what you need to know, which is you need to learn how to run 3 wide inches apart from each other in a draft and how to navigate that. And that's something that you can't really replicate. The only way to really effectively do that is to do the ARCA series or Xfinity or trucks. And this is what I'm concerned about.
So what do you do? Do you say
that's what I'm going to say?
You just can't? Yeah,
I don't know. I don't know what you do, because you make a good point about SVG, and you're right. Like if you narrow the window of opportunity for drivers, non-traditional drivers, your Castro Neves, your SVGs, your Jensen Buttons may be limited. Now, road course, I will say, is different.
It is different.
And I think that needs to be acknowledged. And so maybe that, like a Jensen Button came over and ran a road course, maybe that's the avenue you do, is like, hey, we're going to ease you into this a little bit. We want you to run these bigger races, but you got to run a road course somewhere to at least get acclimated. Or can you run a truck series race or a Xfinity race on an oval somewhere just to get up to speed, to some familiarity, if you will. I don't know. It's a tough thing with a lot of unintended consequences, potential fallout.
For sure. Justin Allgaier wins the Xfinity Series race, and I thought, man, it looked like Eric Almirola was on his way. He was charging, and Allgaier just drove flawless end of that race. Really, really in control. That was really impressive, because it's just been so many times when it feels like, oh man, Allgaier, like something always goes wrong, something happens. And this time it did not. So I think he really needed that kind of win, especially after Phoenix, just the heartbreak from last week. But another part of the Xfinity Series experience that was super impressive to me was just Kyle Busch being in the booth. And, I think Parker Kligerman's awesome. So this is not anything at anybody else. He was, Parker Kligerman was running Sebring. I'm not saying Kyle Busch should. I mean, Kyle Busch is not ready to be.
That's what you're saying.
No, it's not. It's not.
It's what you're saying.
But I do think Kyle Busch showed immediately, like, that he has a future in TV when he's done racing and ready to. I mean, he should be in a Cup Series booth on Sundays when he steps out of that car. He was awesome. It was such a good, and look, a lot of these drivers have brought so much, but it just felt like he was bringing this. It was these expert takes immediately of what was happening in the car and why drivers are thinking a certain way. And also he has the Kyle Busch stuff where he doesn't care what you think.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't care about hurting anybody's feelings. He doesn't care about trying to frame it up nicely. He's just going in on it. Like, he's just saying, no, this is how it is. And like, you could get these glimpses. Imagine if he's in the Cup booth every week and he sees somebody do something or whatever. He's just going to call it out and like, not worry about it. Right. Like, and it was just like, oh, this is, I don't know. I was just really, really impressed by that.
He feels like, to me, the next big NASCAR TV star. And I say this in, like, we kind of knew this about Dale Earnhardt Jr. We felt like towards the end of his career, it's like, man, he's going to get in a TV booth. He's done a few cameos. It's like, he's going to be really, really good. And he got in and he did it, made the transition rather flawlessly, and he's very good. Harvick was much the same way, right? Yep. Mm-hmm. Yeah, like, we knew, like, man, Harvick's he's done these cameo things and TV and everything. It's like, once he gets out of the race car, he's going to be just lights out. I think he's been very, very good. Kyle Busch feels like that as well. And I actually put Logano in that mix too. But Kyle Busch specifically, because we're talking about him, he is so good. He's one of those guys, if I'm a TV network, I'm just handing him a check, handing him a contract, fill it out, you let us know. And when you're ever ready to retire, you are just going to slide you in over here because you are an A-lister. You've got the name recognition. You've got the credentials. You have everything that we want for our main guy in the booth. And yes, he is that guy without a doubt.
I agree. Well, I wanted to say this publicly because I said that to him last night when I mentioned we were talking at High Limit. I was like, oh, it was just really good. And he's like, you're a suck up. You're being a suck up. I was like, no, I'm serious, dude. Right. Like, have you not seen Twitter? Like, I was like, go look at Twitter. He's like, nah, I didn't look at it. I'm like, people are saying the nicest things about you that they've ever said about Kyle Busch ever. Like, you should go look at it right now. Like, I'm serious. Like, I was like, open your Twitter account and go look at it. Like, people are never this nice to you. So it's not just me saying that. Anyway. Well, Jordan, unfortunately, I'm in quite a slump here on the Good Race poll. And now we have, we're not only live on YouTube like we always are this week, but we're also live on X right now doing this for the first time. We've never been live on X before.
Big
We
day.
have over 11,000 people watching right now. And I'm like, dang it. Like all these people are like a small arena full of people are knowing that I suck at my predictions right now. We were both within 5 points last week, but you took the win, and Big Joe Wall, who calculates this for us, you have a 3-game win streak now after I opened up 2-0 to start the year, and I thought I was going to run away with it.
Of course you
You've
did.
won 3 in a row. Well, I'm just better at this than you. I'm sorry.
Well, the numbers say otherwise, but okay.
They do, unfortunately. And you would say the numbers don't lie, but these numbers do. Anyway, so here's the situation this week. We have a Las Vegas race that, probably a dry first stage, chaotic, eventful second stage. Third stage, it was just all over the place.
Yeah.
Was this a good race? I mean, I think people are going to say it definitely was. Certainly Josh Berry being a first-time winner, people feel good about that. It's just a matter of how high is this race going to go. So we're going to do our thing where we're guessing at the same time, right?
Yeah, I guess. I hate this.
So
I really want to go second today.
Okay. Are you ready to show your pick or no?
Yeah.
There's almost 12,000 people watching right now. Can you get it together?
I'm adding drama to this, Jeff. It's called being an entertainer. Okay. Please let me do my job. Okay. All right, I'm ready.
All right. 3, 2, 1.
74.
Wait. What?
Yep.
Wait. Are we talking about the same race?
Okay, we've done this how many times this year? Yes, we're talking about the same race. I'm not telling you what I think this is. I'm telling you what I think people are going to vote on.
74?
Mm-hmm.
Why?
I think people are going to pick apart stage one. I think people are going to pick apart that there was a consensus or a belief that it was hard to pass, that, you couldn't have the fastest cars, couldn't get up to the front. You didn't have like a dramatic finish. Again, not saying this wasn't the typical. I think people are going to look at this and say this wasn't the typical intermediate track race we've seen in the next gen era. And
you had a track record number of lead changes.
I understand.
You had a first-time winner.
Mm-hmm.
You had an exciting
pass
within.
I was fine with this. I like this race. I'm telling you, and I'm telling you, I think people are going to vote low on this.
Well, Dale Jr.'s in the comments, and he said 73. I think you might have copied him. That might have been your straw poll, and that's why you said 74. Can you confirm that?
No, I'm my own man.
Yeah, you're your own man who does a straw poll with your friends every week.
I don't do it every week, and I haven't done it in a long time. So give me credit. So
okay,
we'll see.
Well, I'm way out. One of us is going to be way.
I think you're way out. I can't believe you went 91. Like, if you would have went the 80s, okay, 91.
Yeah, I think it's going to be 90%.
Like, you thought COTA was a bad race, and yet you thought this was a
bad race.
You didn't think it was like an all-time. You didn't think it was one of the. You didn't think it was like a great race like everyone else was raving about. Yeah. So my point is your perception on things is a little off lately.
Okay, well, trust me, it's going to be way closer. This is an easy win for me.
Okay.
This is an easy win. There's no way it's going to be in the 70s. Okay. You guys are nuts, I think. I mean, anyway, okay. Well, anything else to talk about from this race?
Yeah. I got a few things.
Okay.
Sorry. One, we need to acknowledge Adam Stevens. We touched on it briefly, but to have the presence of mind to tell Christopher Bell as he's going out of your pit stall, down pit road, find a pit stall and get in there. And then Christopher Bell to have the presence of mind to like basically drive like my mother and makes like go across 4 lanes of traffic and cut everybody off to find a pit stall. And I mean, save themselves probably a tire falling off, which would have been, 2-lap penalty and the suspension, anything like that. Gave him an opportunity to have to salvage his race. So great call by Adam Stevens, one of the more underrated crew chiefs in the garage. How about the number of loose wheels today, by the way? And like loose wheels and tires falling off. That was surprisingly high. One of those guys who was victimized was Kyle Busch. Great run today. Another good run where they have speed in the race car, not necessarily the finish to relate to it. That jumped out to me. And then what else did I have on my list? Noah Gragson, really good run today. He turned in a good run a few weeks ago. Is consistently kind of running well, but another guy today had a cut tire or something and hit the wall. But good run from him. And I think that is everything I have on my list. And can we give a quick shout out to Bobby, our producer, by the way, who completed the LA Marathon, which is absolutely crazy.
Yeah, did that this morning, and here he is on the live stream. Going back to Bell for a second, I asked him about that after the race. Like, how did you? Because I went back and watched his in car, right? Because he was all the way out to the grass, like in the far lane.
Yeah.
And Adam Stevens is saying, get to a pit box, get to a pit box. And I was like, how did you find like a teammate pit box? Like where were you even doing? Like, how'd you do that? And Bell said he was just kind of going along and he was trying to get over and he had his hand out the window and he was, other cars were kind of avoiding him. And he said out of the corner of his eye, cause he's like, I don't know where my teammates' pit boxes are.
Yeah.
It's not like
you don't study that.
Yeah. Yeah. So he just said out of the corner of his eye, he saw the 19's pit box. So he just kind of got there at the last minute, but he's like, honestly, he's like, I guess it saved us a 2-lap penalty, but, because all these people are like, oh, that's not fair. Well, it's not fair. It's pitting outside the box.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a penalty. He had to start at the tail end of the field. So he got the penalty for it.
Well, yeah, but he also wasn't 2 laps. Yeah, it wasn't 2 laps down though.
Right. Well, I mean, okay. Either way, like, let's say he had backed up all the way to his pit stall or whatever.
Yeah.
Right. Or his team had run down there. He's still going to the back. Like, the bottom line is he wasn't going to leave pit road with the loose wheel. That you get the penalty when you leave pit road with the loose wheel. That's when you get held 2 laps.
Yeah.
That's when you get the crew members suspended, stuff like that. Right. So it was going to be, it looked cool because it was the same kind of thing, but it didn't it wasn't a big difference in terms of like backing up because he would have stayed on the lead lap. It was under caution. You know what I'm saying? So it was a very smart move for sure, but
very smart move.
Yeah.
But if you don't process that though, and you don't get that, and you hit the end of pit road, and you're on the track, it's game over. I mean, that's what it is. So I just thought the whole communication process and Adam Stevens recognize that and have the presence of mind to sit there, find a teammate's pit box, which is something I have never heard a crew chief do.
Yeah.
And then 2, never have actually seen a driver do it. It was like a Days of Thunder moment where Russ Wheeler's team is coming out to help Cole Trickle's team.
Yeah, there was a bunch of wheel issues, as you mentioned. Bowman ends up rallying to 7th. So that was one because he said he had like the biggest vibration he's ever had. And he was able to diagnose that. But the team, it sounded like, said that the wheel wasn't loose. So or they didn't think it was. The other thing that we didn't mention, I mean, you mentioned Gregson's good day gone bad. Hocevar also had a good day gone bad because he was going to run top 10 easily. And then I guess Ty Gibbs was, they made him aware. They thought the 54 team was aware that he was going to be pulling out of the pit stall with taking a 2-tire call while Gibbs was pulling in. And somehow that wasn't given and they collided. And that was right after the pit stop. Before that, Hocevar had to back up and lost a lot of track position. So the 77 and 54, that was just not working out all day. But and that kind of ruined his day there. And he finished 2 laps down 30th. But Hocevar looked fast again. And Spire honestly
looked good fast. Michael McDowell on the pole, first time ever for
pole,
Spire Motorsports.
Haley finished 14th, and I was talking to Rodney Childers afterwards, and he was like, honestly, like it stinks that we weren't able to get back up there. He's like, I thought we had a top 4 car on speed. Like he thought they were really good. But they've been hurt by, when Larson lost his pit crew members,
the domino effect.
They lose because Spire has a Hendrick development pit crew. So they took crew members from Haley's team to fill in for Larson. So then Haley's pit stops you know what I mean? They've had
It's
a couple rough
unfair,
weeks
honestly,
with
in a
that.
way,
Yeah.
because like the 5 team isn't really effectively punished because Haley's pit crew is pretty good. So they're getting the B team necessarily, but they're still really good. So Larson isn't losing anything. But Haley said it himself, like now we're getting, and I use this, I'm not trying to be mean here, but we're getting the third stringers essentially, right? And like we're the
it
ones
hurts
that are
right.
It's a domino effect. We're the ones that are actually negatively impacted here. Where Kyle Larson, the 5 team, can kind of go about their business like, whatever, like no big deal. Like we're the ones who actually get cost here, and that's the unfortunate reality of how this whole thing is set up. But it is what it is. Good Spire again, a lot of speed in the race cars. I've said this before, I'll say it again. It's great they have speed, but at some point you've got to start cashing in. And because you just don't know how long you're going to continue to have that speed and those opportunities. It's good to see that happen. But you've got to punch your ticket at some point.
All right. Well, I think that might be it. So Homestead is up next. And man, the last time we saw a Homestead race, one of the most spectacular finishes we've seen. And I got to talk to Tyler Reddick about that for the 12 questions this week. That's coming out on The Athletic as well. So stay tuned for that.
But so weird we're going to Homestead and it's not a playoff race.
Yeah, I hope tickets are. I'm worried about that.
I've heard there's been an upswing. I was told I was told there's an upswing and it's trending in the right direction. Speaking of which, on The Athletic this week, I will have a piece on Homestead Miami Speedway, kind of looking at its future, the challenges that it's facing down there, what their new track president is trying to do and revitalize it, and also could we see the championship back there as well?
Okay. Well, I look forward to reading that. Everybody, appreciate your support. Almost 13,000 people record for us on the live stream here, as well as all of you listening on the podcast. Thanks as always. And we will talk to you next time on The Teardown. See you, everybody.